We're jumping right into one of the most dramatic, behind-the-scenes rescue missions in the history of international sports. We're talking about the 2026 Commonwealth Games. Normally, the lead up to a massive mega event like this is all about the athletes, the training, and those shiny new stadiums. But the story of the 2026 Games? It is literally a nail-biting thriller about logistics, severe budget crises, and a massive global event that very nearly didn't happen at all.
So what actually happens when a multi-sport global juggernaut suddenly has nowhere to go? Well, it's a genuine crisis. These events require years of planning, billions of dollars, and massive infrastructure. So when a host suddenly pulls the plug, you're left with thousands of athletes in absolute limbo, facing the very real possibility that the entire event will just be permanently canceled. Let's look at exactly how the Commonwealth Games found themselves in this completely unprecedented predicament.
Section 1. A Games in Crisis, the chaotic journey to find a home for 2026.
Okay, let's dive into this. To understand the rescue, we really have to understand the collapse first. Let's trace this timeline, because it brilliantly illustrates just how incredibly fragile the traditional mega event model has become. It actually starts back in 2017. The South African city of Durban was originally supposed to host the 2022 Games, but they were stripped of the rights due to financial concerns. So Birmingham, which was planning to host in 2026, had to step in early to save 2022. This, of course, left 2026 completely vacant. After several cities withdrew their bids, mostly because of cost concerns, the Australian state of Victoria finally stepped up in April 2022. They were planning this massive, multi-city regional event. The crisis seemed totally averted, right? But then, fast forward just 15 months to July 2023, Victoria abruptly cancels its plans and withdraws entirely.
And this staggering number right here is exactly why Victoria walked away. 6 to 7 billion Australian dollars. When Victoria initially bid for the Games, they obviously had a budget in mind, but those projected costs quickly skyrocketed. This 6 to 7 billion figure was double their estimated economic benefit for the state. Double. The Premier of Victoria simply stated that the government could no longer justify that kind of expense to taxpayers. This cancellation sent absolute shockwaves through the sporting world. Gold Coast briefly offered to step in, then they backed out. Malaysia was offered £100 million to host, but declined, saying it just wasn't enough to cover the massive costs. Singapore also explored it and walked away. The 2026 Games were completely homeless.
Section 2. Glasgow to the rescue. How Scotland stepped up at the 11th hour.
Just when it seemed like the 2026 Games would be postponed or just canceled entirely, Glasgow emerged as the hero at the absolute 11th hour. And this brilliantly illustrates the massive paradigm shift that had to happen to save these Games. Look at the stark contrast here. Victoria's canceled vision was the traditional grand plan, billions of dollars, a sprawling multi-city footprint spreading across regional hubs, and the construction of brand new dedicated athlete villages. Now look at Glasgow's pragmatic rescue model. Zero significant public funds required, relying entirely on existing venues. And instead of building massive new athlete villages, they're just going to house the athletes in existing hotels and university student residences. It is an incredibly lean, budget-conscious reality check for modern sports.
But you might be wondering, if there is zero public funds, who is actually paying for the whole shebang? Well, the answer is wonderfully ironic. 200 million Australian dollars. This figure represents the compensation package secured from the Victorian government after they broke their hosting contract. So, in a massive twist of fate, the financial penalty paid by the Australian state that cancelled the Games is literally serving as the primary financial engine funding Glasgow's rescue mission. You can't make this stuff up.
Let's break down that financial blueprint just a little bit further, because honestly, it's a masterpiece of modern event management. This formula completely removes the burden from local Scottish taxpayers. Alongside Victoria's $200 million compensation, the Commonwealth Games Federation is directly injecting £100 million into the event. On top of that, they're projecting an additional £30 to £50 million to be raised from commercial sources and corporate sponsorships. This is a massive shift. It proves you don't actually need to bankrupt a city just to host the world.
Section 3. The Scaled-Down Blueprint. Doing more with less.
Okay, so the money is sorted, but what does a global event running on a fraction of its usual budget actually look like? 10. That is the magic number for Glasgow 2026. The sports program was drastically slashed to just 10 sports. To put that into perspective, this is the lowest number of sports offered at the Commonwealth Games since 1994.
To make this event feasible on a tight budget and an incredibly short timeline, organizers had to make some pretty ruthless cuts.
Let's look at the tough sacrifices that were made. On the left, you see the survivors. Athletics and swimming are the two compulsory sports. They absolutely had to stay. They're joined by highly compact, existing venue-friendly sports like 3x3 basketball, artistic gymnastics, track cycling, bowls, boxing, judo, netball, and weightlifting. But look over at the right side. These are major staples of the Commonwealth Games that have been dropped completely. Rugby sevens? Gone. Field hockey? Gone. Diving, T20 cricket, squash, table tennis, road cycling, triathlon, all dropped. It's a stark reminder of the serious compromises necessary to keep the event alive at all.
But here is where the story gets really inspiring. While the overall sports program was slashed, parasports actually saw a massive integration. The 2026 Games will officially feature the largest number of parasport events in the entire history of the competition. There will be 47 finals deeply integrated across 6 of the sports, including para-athletics, para-track cycling, and wheelchair 3x3 basketball. It's a brilliant strategic choice. It shows that even when you're cutting costs and scaling down, you don't have to sacrifice inclusivity. In fact, you can prioritize it.
Section 4. The sports and venues. A compact footprint for maximum impact.
So we know what sports are being played, but where are they playing them? Now, what's really interesting about this is how incredibly compact the physical footprint of these games will be. Just look at this distribution. A massive 60% of the venues are clustered tightly together right at the SCC campus. That includes the OVO Hydro, the SCC Center, and the SCC Armadillo. Another 20% is in the East End, utilizing the existing Tollcross Swimming Center and the Sir Chris Hoy Velodrome. And the final 20% is out in the West End at Scottstown Stadium for athletics. There are literally only 4 main venue hubs in total. Compare that to the sprawling, multi-city logistics of recent mega events, and you can instantly see how much money and transport headache this saves.
Because of this hyper-compact footprint, the organizers have had to get incredibly creative, and I absolutely love these quirky logistical innovations. For the first time in the 96-year history of the Games, the opening ceremony will be fully indoors, held at the 12,000-seat OVO Hydro. Lawn bowls, which is historically a staple outdoor sport, is being moved entirely indoors to fit the SCC Center. And my absolute favorite detail, because there's no budget to build an athletes' village, world-class athletes will literally be sleeping in the student dormitories of Glasgow University and Glasgow Caledonian University. It's a low-cost model that relies on using exactly what the city already has.
Section 5. A new era begins. The cultural execution and future of the Games. Now, the Commonwealth Games aren't just about spreadsheets and logistics, right? They're a massive cultural celebration, and you have to appreciate how Glasgow is injecting its unique personality right into these budget constraints. Look at these cultural quirks. The official mascot is Finny the Unicorn, but because it's Glasgow, Finny is wearing a traffic cone on her head. It's a brilliant, hilarious nod to the famous Duke of Wellington statue in the city center that locals notoriously keep crowning with a traffic cone. Then there's the official tartan, designed by Siobhan McKenzie. It features exactly 74 gray threads to represent the participating nations and 26 bold blue threads as a nod to the year 2026. It's thoughtful, it's highly local, and it gives the Games a distinct identity without needing some billion-dollar marketing budget.
So the crucial point here is how they're reinventing traditions to fit this new era. Take the King's Baton Relay, for example. Traditionally, one single baton travels across the entire globe, which is a massive logistical and financial undertaking. Glasgow completely re-engineered this. Instead of a single baton, they crafted 74 individual batons right in Glasgow. Each of the 74 Commonwealth Games associations gets their own, and they're allowed to customize it to reflect their local culture. It's a pragmatic, decentralized solution that still honors the core spirit of the relay.
Which brings us to our final thought. Is this pragmatic, scaled-down model the only way mega events can survive in the modern era? Glasgow was a rescue mission, a pure necessity born out of Victoria's $7 billion sticker shock. But by stripping away the excess, ditching the massive athlete villages, slashing the sports program, relying entirely on existing infrastructure, and funding it without local taxpayer money, Glasgow might have accidentally created the exact blueprint for the future. As cities around the world increasingly reject the massive financial burden of hosting global sports, Glasgow 2026 might just prove that doing more with less isn't just a rescue strategy. It might literally be the only viable path forward. Thanks for joining me for this explainer. Keep questioning the system.